Hi, this is Peter Teuscher. I'm here with Tobi Dempker. Thanks for joining us for another podcast where we talk about personal development, professional development, and maybe even a little bit of philosophy at times. We kind of pick a topic and see where the conversation takes us. So you ready to see where the conversation takes us today, Tobi?
I sure am. I have no idea what we're gonna, where we will end up, but that's the fun part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, what I'd like to talk about is feeling stuck. It's something that people come to a lot of coaches for, and a lot of people want to get coaching because they want to change something in their lives, and a lot of times that's somehow to do with feeling stuck. And I've been there in my life at times where you just feel like you're not able to progress forward, or you just feel like, where your life is now is just in a kind of a loop. It's, you're in kind of routine, and you feel kind of stuck in the life that you've created for yourself. I have people come to me for coaching, and they're at a point in their life, they've achieved all kinds of things. Maybe they got family and kids, or maybe they've got the career they wanted. They've gone to university or not, or whatever, but they've done all these things and they've checked all these boxes that they thought would bring them success and happiness. And then they realize, actually, no, it's not doing it for me. And so they feel stuck in the life they've created for themselves. And so, I'd like to talk a little bit today about not only recognizing that feeling of feeling stuck and how to move ahead. And I think it's not just something for individuals. I see it in organizations as well. People get so captured in all their routines and their processes, and then they need to be able to change because of market conditions or whatever, but they're kind of stuck in a way of doing things and a mentality and a culture. And so, I think it can be something on an individual level and on an organizational level that, people feel stuck and they don't know how to move forward and don't know how to go ahead. So, so what do you think? What are your thoughts on feeling stuck?
Well, what immediately hits me is really that it's a feeling. Being stuck and feeling stuck are two very different things, and I think it's very rare that we actually are stuck because, and we've talked about this before, like how you always have an option, you always have a choice to do something. However, that option or that choice that you have might be discouraging, or might be some kind of fear that is related to that. So feeling stuck for me, it's very much about, I have this feeling that I'm stuck, but it's really that I don't want to take any initiative in the other options that I might have. And I'm not really willing to consider them because they don't feel good to me, right? So discovering what that feeling is about, for me, that's the first step.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're right. It's absolutely a perception. And a lot of what keeps us stuck, a lot of the things that stand in our way in life are based in fear, right? So fear keeps us, when you look at the typical fear responses, you've got, the fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of people tend to freeze, or the safest thing to do is do nothing for some people, at least in terms of perception. And a lot of the choices we make out of fear get us in a place where we feel stuck, right? Because we don't feel like we have options. We can't see the choices there for us and the opportunities to move forward, because fear keeps us stuck from making choices or taking those steps that could move us forward. So, I think fear is a really big one. And so, when you recognize what fears are motivating you, or what, what's holding you back, I think that's the kind of the first step. When we talk about in coaching, we usually look at, okay, where are you trying to get to, and what could be the first step that you could take? What's the first action you could take in order to move yourself forward? So at least you have some sort of direction. Because I think when people talk about, sometimes people are afraid to make a commitment for, a choice of where they want to go. And I try and remind people that it's important to have direction, right? Even if you don't know how it's going to end up, you would never get on a boat, a sailboat, or any kind of boat, and without having some place you're sailing to. I don't know. I'm not a sailor, so maybe you would just go out for a sail. But your point of where you'll have a route that you're trying to follow, and then a final destination, which could be the same as where you started. But the thing is, when you sail off and you have a place that you want to go to, the weather gets bad, the water gets choppy, you can change your route, right? And you can change the direction. You can always change while you're underway. And so I think that's the same thing in life when fear has you stuck, when fear is the biggest thing that's holding you back from making change. I think that's where you can assure yourself that even if I take these steps, it doesn't mean that I can't turn around, I can't take a new course, I can't take a different direction. And I think the one thing that's for certain when you're feeling stuck is where you are now is not where you want to be. So doing nothing is not really an option, right?
Yeah, it's so highly related to change in different ways, right? So how are you, you're, as you mentioned, that perception of where you are, what would you like to change, what do you don't want to change? And also I'm thinking about this interesting question, if you flip it around, so what does it feel like to be unstuck? What does that look like? What does that mean to not be stuck? Because as you say, I think that a lot of people get into, especially in our age, actually, that like you have some kind of midlife crisis, and you feel stuck with your job and maybe your spouse and your family situation or whatever it is, right? But at that point, okay, so what did you expect? What was your expectations of life? And maybe there's a amount of disappointment in there, or that this isn't where I pictured myself to be. But then, okay, so looking at, well, what would it be like to be unstuck? What does that mean? And just discovering that a bit. It's about what would you like to prioritize, but also what is your perception of your own expectations.
Yeah.
I think that could be really interesting to discover.
I agree. I think that's a good mental exercise to think about what would be my life if I wasn't stuck, because sometimes the thing that they think is the problem, the thing that that people think is keeping them stuck or giving them this sense of, dissatisfaction, is not actually where the problem is. That people will blame their relationship for the way they feel, or they'll blame the workplace for the way they feel. But it might be that it's just the way they've approached their job, or the way they've approached their relationship. It's easy when you're unhappy in your life to blame the people closest to you, and that's often your partner, your spouse, and so and then you start to feel like we've missed out on something, and so it get this sense of feeling stuck is really you've, in some cases it's I don't feel like I've fulfilled my potential, or I don't feel like I'm living the life I want to live, but I don't know where else I want to be, or I don't know which steps. So I think it's really important. Some people want to have a clear plan. They need to have a very clear plan, and it's fine if you have family and kids and people who depend on you. I understand wanting the security of a plan, as long as you remember that there are no guarantees in life. And that's, I think, where a lot of the fear comes. We want to have security, but we want to have freedom as well. And the things, and security and safety, and there are no guarantees. So a lot of the security we imagine or we create for ourselves is an illusion anyway, right? You can lose your job tomorrow. Your health can fail. Something could happen to your partner, and hopefully not, but someone could pass away. There could be a death in the family. There's all these things that don't want to focus on the negatives, but these are all shocking, surprising things that happen all the time. And so there are no guarantees. And so when you can approach life, this is the thing why this obstacle of fear is such an important one to put into perspective, right? And because it's never the fact that you're afraid is not, people think that the courage is this absence of fear, but it's not. It's just how you process the fear, how you deal with it. That's the important part, and that's the thing that I think keeps us feeling very stuck, is this fear of moving forward and this indecision because of that fear.
Yeah. I also realize when we're talking about that, there is kind of an inflation in expectations of what like life should be. And now I don't have any kind of proof for this at all, but it seems like there's a lot of problems with mental, it's just well, which are depressions and mental, we should call it in unhappiness and well, just sort of issues with related to unhappiness and that comes from a lot from social media and what's expected from life, and like everybody else is traveling around the world or everybody else is driving sports cars or whatever it is, right? So we're comparing ourselves with an image of life that has been projected upon us without us ever even reflecting if this is realistic or not. And then just taking that step back, what do I expect from my life? What are my intentions? What is important for me? So you don't, if we're benchmarking with a jet set sort of life standard that we don't even know if it's real or not, what's that going to do to us and our own expectations? And then it's probably a lot easier to feel stuck if that's your sort of go-to objective, right?
Yeah.
So just making sure, also thinking about what is my expectations, what are my intentions for life, what's important for me. And I think you can be a very, very, very happy person going to the same job for well, your whole life, if that is fulfilling to you and if that caters to what's important to you. But if you want to compare yourself with, I don't know, the Kardashians or whatever, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, certainly there's an element of feeling gratitude for what you have, but that and I think you can at the same time be grateful for what you have, but still have the sense of wanting to move forward and grow. And we know that from our talks about motivation, that one of the pillars of motivation, when as long as money's off the table and you're able to survive and everything, one of the big motivators is mastery, this ability to continue to grow and evolve and develop, right? So to work towards mastering things, so that can be a part of that dissatisfaction, and part of what keeps you feeling stuck. But the part you were talking about there, how we orient ourselves and how we get to where we are, because it's when I think about when you talk to young people now, some of the things that they want to be YouTube celebrities, or they want to be influencers, right? Things that maybe when we were young we wanted to be rock stars or whatever. I sure. As a teenager, honestly, that was one of those aspirations I had as a drummer at the time. But I think this is a really important piece to help avoid getting to those stuck places. And if you are in a stuck place, a way to reorient yourself. And that's really to go back to what your values are and to recognize that, did I pursue my values in order to get to the position I am right now? Because we all make the best decisions we have with the information that we have and the knowledge that we have and experience that we have at the time. So, you get somewhere with all the best intentions, or you get somewhere because you've listened to other people and you've followed your fear rather than where you wanted to go. You've run away from things rather than moving toward where you want to go. And so I think, it was ages ago we did a session on values, but I think recognizing your values, and actually you had a really good tool that I've used since. I had different ways of approaching how to determine your values, but you talked about using the Post-its, I think, okay. and writing lots of different values and then pulling them off, and then the ones that are most difficult to remove, those are your kind of final, I don't know, 5 or 10 core values. And I've actually used that with clients since. And so I think when you go back to looking at what your core values are, and thinking about, well, was it my values that brought me to where I am now? or was I just not aware of them at the time when I was making these choices? And when you go back to those kind of basics of what's important to me, then you can get some clarity about where you want to be going, right? Rather than trying to go, well, I desperately got to get out of here. And I think when people sometimes feel stuck, they'll get panic and they'll abandon ship. People will leave relationships and maybe regret it, or they'll have an affair and regret it, or they think that in order to live the life they were meant, they've got to cast their job aside, they've got to quit tomorrow and run away, and so that's fine. That could be a solution. It definitely forces you into some dramatic change. Yeah. When I talk to people about getting out of your comfort zone, if you draw a circle that is your comfort zone, and then you jump way beyond that outer circle, you're bound to get into uncharted territory, and it's about knowing yourself. So what often happens when people do these massive changes and they jump into the deep end, sometimes it'll work out, but sometimes they'll freak out and they're so afraid and they think, oh, I've made a big mistake, and then they go back to their comfort zone and they kind of stick there, and maybe they're miserable. So I encourage people to go to the edge of their comfort zone, try out new things, get curious, push yourself a little bit, but don't just jump off into that deep end. Into a place that you're so uncomfortable that you become overwhelmed with fear and then start to make fear-based decisions and choices. I think that's a really good rule of thumb. So when you're feeling stuck, it may not be the right time. You may not have the right perspective to make sort of extreme decisions. Although we hear these stories of people who decided I'm going to make a cut, and they drastically changed their life and it worked out for the better. So there is no one right way. But I've seen a lot of people give up on their dreams because they thought that to become an artist or to do this thing, they had to give up everything and just start from there instead of working their way up. It's about knowing yourself, right? Knowing some people can handle that kind of stress and pressure, or they have this resolve and commitment, but not everybody does. And sometimes people, the fear that results from leaving everything behind and going, oh no, now I don't know where, I don't know if I can really do this. Without that support structure, some people will run back to their comfort zone and never try again.
Yeah, and in my life philosophy, it's very much about balance all the time. And in this case, I guess it's about having a balance in your foundation versus having the balance of new opportunities. What opportunities are there out there? What am I willing to explore? But what am I willing to keep as my foundation? I guess I don't think about it very much sort of on a conscious level, but unconsciously, I think I'm always there sort of knowing what is my secure area, what is my platform, my bases that I want to keep, but then also looking around. So what are the opportunities for different ways to enrich in life and make it interesting? And I think that's it. For me, that perception part is so important. So what is life supposed to be? Is it, if we're feeling stuck, what's our sort of what's a perspective on what life is? Is it a journey? Is it is it something that is at stake, that we have to, a path that we have to follow? And what is the final destination? It's something that is unavoidable, unfortunately, I guess, for all of us. But the road to the final destination, it's going to look different for everybody, and you can drive there in very, very many different ways. So what are some options that are intriguing and interesting to you? What do you want to happen?
Yeah, I agree, and that's for me part of developing a personal philosophy, a belief about the way to live your life. In the book I'm working on, I have a chapter on choice making, and I kind of relate it to riding on horseback. You can really pull up back on the reins and be really careful. You can ride recklessly with reckless abandon, or you can go at a pace that you can handle. And I talk about it in terms of and not trampling through people's gardens and not leaving too much manure on your way. But this metaphor of being on horseback and the choices you make are you pulling on the reins, pulling back, letting it go left and right, but just recognizing that you have some control, but there's also some momentum that carries you with the choices that you make, right? So, so anyway, I found that was an interesting metaphor and picture for me, and hopefully it is for other people as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes me think. It's a different story. I'm not going to even go in there. I thought about a story once, and when I was in China, I thought I was the short version is I thought I was going to go horse riding in the Himalayas, like being up and free, and it turned out that I was sort of dragged on a mule for a few hours.
Well, life has those surprises, especially in China. So, so we've talked about values. I think values are really important. When you're feeling stuck, are you living by the values, by your core values? Do you even know what your core values are, right? So that's a really important one to recognize and reflect on. And then what amount of change can you handle right now? I think that's a good one to evaluate. Have you just had it up to here and you can't stand another day in your job or another day in your relationship? Definitely when people are about to make really big life changes or decisions in their life, I always recommend they find a way to remove themselves from the situation completely so they can take a different perspective, right? In systemic principles, we talk about zooming in and out, and seeing things from different perspectives, and so we can better see the big picture. And so, if you're trying to make a big decision with your life, if you can, take a weekend away, get away from everything, get away from the people that influence you, or immerse yourself in a group of people maybe that you haven't. Take a workshop or whatever you can afford or can do. But really, ideally, take a week or two if you can, depending on how big the decision is. But certainly, at least taking a day, and even if you have to call in sick to work or whatever, just removing yourself from everything so that you can, get a clearer perspective and see things through fresh eyes. I think that finding some distance from the problem and the issue is a really important one before you make any kind of rash big decisions. And I think to get unstuck, a lot of feeling stuck is about being stuck in routines, in old habits, and those are to do with you. They're not to do with anyone else. And so we feel stuck because we have this, I think, intrinsic, desire for freedom, for a certain amount of, autonomy, to be able to be self-directed as much as we can. And so if we're feeling stuck, maybe it's just because we've piled on too many responsibilities, too many things to do. Before we started our conversation, we were talking about there's a lot going on. I'm in a fortunate position that there's people demanding my time, want to pay for my time, but there's a lot going on, and so that's a good problem to have. But at some point, in years gone by, I was working too much, and I kind of over COVID, I reflected and realized, actually, I want to keep more balance. I want to have time for my relationships, and I want to have time for, writing that I love to do, and so on. And so when you fill your life up too one-sided, that too, and then you feel like, I've made too many commitments, and that makes you feel stuck as well, right? All these obligations that you have, these things that you do, not because this is why the values piece is so important, because we have a lot of shoulds and have tos in life, and the less of those we have, the better, because the commitments we make, I think if it feels like I have to or I should, those are out of obligation, and I think if you do things out of this your own desire, I want to, how my 3 words for the only 3 words you need for or the 3 phrases you need for what you're planning on doing is I can, I want to, and I will, right? And I think if you can guide your life that way, it's really, really helpful. So
yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, personally, I love that. Just thinking about what excites you in your current situation, and what do you want to do. So, what do you? Of course, I mean, we all understand that in our daily routines, there are a lot of stuff that we feel like we have to do. It's we all have obligations, and as a responsible citizen, we have to cater to those and take care of those. But I'm sure that we can always find some time for things that we really want to do, and that can excite you and create new opportunities. And and I always get to that point. If I'm at a certain point, I might not be sure what do I want to do. Well, then find something else that I haven't tried before. That's really exciting, right? So, and that could be as you said, go to a workshop or trying a new sport. I don't know, learn a new instrument. There's so many options for things to learn and to discover now, and who knows what's that going to lead to? You and I. That's an incredibly inspiring and interesting part of life when you go into something you have no idea, you have no expectations, but along the way you find, oh, this is actually interesting, and you meet really interesting people, and through these interesting people you get new interactions and a new network, and I mean that can lead to new relationships or job opportunities or business opportunities, whatever it is, right? But it's enriching, and that leads me to the other part of like getting new perspectives on things. Because for me personally, a typical situation where I feel stuck is I'm sitting home alone working on something, and I feel like I can't go any further with this at the moment. And I'm sitting and working by myself. I don't have colleagues running around in my office. So what kind of network do I then have to discuss things and get new perspectives on things? I'm enjoying these conversations because we can get different perspectives on things. What kind of people can I call up and just talk about things about? That is also such an important for me to feel unstuck. And very often it's about where we actually began the conversation. It's about that is the feeling. You're not stuck, but it's just you need to get that other perspective or another view or another feeling about your situation, then I can move forward with it. So for me, that networking part is really, really important. Even though I am a very reflective kind of person who likes to sit and dwell with my own thoughts, but I still have a need to discuss things with others and get different perspectives.
Yeah, no, I'm the same, and I think you're right, and it's a good one when you're stuck on a problem, right? When you feel stuck on a problem, it's great to step back from it, and the same thing goes for anything. When I talk to other writers, and you get what they call writer's block. It's looking for inspiration. And I think when you feel stuck in life, you can do the same thing. You can, where can I find inspiration? And maybe it's from talking to other people, sharing your thoughts and feelings, and hearing other people's stories. We have so many options now. We can listen to podcasts. We can, you can interact with people, you can hear other people's stories, and find some inspiration in that. And I think that's a really important piece of it all. So I think knowing, the whole piece that you said about, it's a feeling. And I think that's really important thing to recognize, that what are feelings? Feelings are, communication from, on an unconscious level. You don't, it doesn't communicate in words, right? Even when you dream, it's usually you have feelings and you have metaphorical images, and it doesn't make a lot of sense some of the times, and it's like what are you feeling, right? And so I think when you recognize that that sense of feeling stuck is some kind of a communication that a change is needed. If you can look at it that way, instead of getting frustrated or getting fed up and going, okay, my inner signal, my inner guidance system is telling me something, and it's telling me that it's time for me to change something about my life. And if it's a real strong feeling of feeling stuck, then I've probably been putting it off, or I've probably been suppressing it for a while. And so it's really, I need to put this at the top of my priority list in order to make a change in my life that's going to lead to more happiness and more fulfillment. So yeah, some people just live with a sense of stuckness. Well, there's nothing I can change. And if you give up and you resolve to just kind of push through, I mean, life's too valuable to live like that. And I think you see the same in organizations. It's like, well, this is the way it's always been. I see it in, people in politics. People go, wow, there's politicians won't change and there's too much corruption and it's like there's nothing I can do. So you feel stuck and you're taking away all your options to change. So if you feel so strongly about it, then it's time to look at, well, what can I contribute? What changes can I make? And so I think we feel stuck in these systems. We both think systemically, right? You and I both have a fairly systemic philosophy on the way life works. And if you feel stuck by captured by a system, then it's about, well, looking at the components where you have influence and control and where you can make choices to create change. And I think without that willingness to act and, well, first of all, to reflect and analyze and then to take action from there, I think you're going to feel helpless and you're going to feel like a victim, right?
Yeah. One thing that a specific tool, if people are interested in that too, that I think is really beneficial, because you said about reflect and analyze the situation. It's a model that I've used in coaching, and maybe I've talked about this before, but it's called the leave bring model. So something that you're happy or unhappy to leave. So just certain listing that, and then looking ahead, so what's to come, the bring part. So what are you happy about or unhappy about in the things that are coming? And for me, that can be a really good way. And I have a very specific moment when I used it. It was when we moved from China to Sweden. And me and my wife, we sat down and looked upon, okay, so what are we happy to be leaving in China? What are we unhappy to be leaving in China? And what are we happy to be, the bringing part in going to Sweden, and what are we unhappy about? And just by mapping that up, it gave us a really good idea of, we're happy about this. This is really exciting. This is going to be fun. But also to realize how we could manage some of the things that we would miss or that we're unhappy about, and dealing with some kind of strategy of how can we do this. So maybe it's a little bit more on the change part of the personal transformation or the personal change that we're going through. But it really helped us to map out this. We weren't feeling stuck, but we were basically unstucking ourselves by making a change, right? But that can be a bit scary. So it was a really good way of mapping out that fear and saying, well, this is good, this is not good. How do we deal with that? And in our case, it was a really, really, really good conversation that helped us a lot, I think. So
yeah, I think
a good model to use.
Absolutely. And I think that's a way of avoiding getting to that stuck place, right? You're actually, you're proactive in avoiding getting stuck, because people will make choices without any foresight, and then they feel like they've hit a dead end, right? And they've given up all of their options. So there's a similar method. The sort of keep, stop, and change model, where you this is the stuff we want to keep doing, this is stuff we want to stop doing, and this is the stuff we want to change or start doing. So things we're not doing yet that we want to start doing. I think if you can put things in those three categories as well, and I've seen that in organizations, but you can use it for your own life. And sometimes it's the little things that you change that will have the biggest impact. That's why when it's an old tool, but the Wheel of Life is a great one to get a holistic picture of someone's situation. Where for anyone who doesn't know what the Wheel of Life is, it's like a circular map. So you have a circle. It's divided up into like pieces of a pie, and then there's little rings of that you can use to measure from the center to the outside. And so I encourage people to divide their life up into, some coaches will have preset kind of categories. I let people, if we have the time, I like to get people to do a little mind map of their life and then pick out sort of, these are the most important elements of my life. And then you draw them around the circle, the outer edge, And then within each section of the pie, so on each pie, it's labeled as a part of your life. And within that, you go 0 is, it can't get any worse, and 10 is it can't get any better. And then somewhere in between is where you rate that section of your life. And so sometimes when you map out, this is the picture of my life, and this is what I think of it right now. So if your relationship's on a 8 and your job is at a 2, well, then it's kind of obvious that something in your job needs to change. But sometimes it's not that. I had one client, and she was sure it was, she was unhappy with her job, and then she realized that no, actually, the thing that she really wanted to change was something else. And through mapping it out and figuring out all these different, like sometimes it's just you blame your job for things, just like you blame your relationships for things, but it's because you're not taking initiative. You're not saying no to enough things. So, there are people in work positions where they get work piled on them because they don't, or in a relationship, they don't say, this is the line in the sand, they don't create limits and boundaries. And so that starts to get you into places where you're deeper and deeper into this hole of feeling stuck because you've taken on more and more obligations that that you didn't want in the first place, but you just let yourself go down to that that dead end, as I was talking about. So I think those are just really important things to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a good tool as well, to just get as you say, a holistic picture of what does balance look like to you, and what do you need more or less of. And like we talk about when people, the grow model is a really simple coaching model, and so we talk about the goal, but we also, the next step is to talk about the current reality. And so people often go from, here's what I want to go, and they go looking at the options without looking at, well, where am I now? And I think that's the thing, that finding a way to evaluate your current life situation, and not just in terms of, we always talk about things systemically, but people look at it in a linear way. It's like, I'm unhappy with this, and so this is what it needs to change. But it's never that simple. There are always other components, and when you make a choice, the other things will be affected, and you don't realize the full consequences of the choices you're making. And so when you take a big picture of, so one thing with the wheel of life, I'll go, well, what's it going to take to move this from a 5 to a 7, for example, in terms of your rating? And what will that change have on the rest of your life picture, right? And so from that, we kind of look at where do we want to start? What's the biggest lever I can pull to make a positive change in my life? And so when you're feeling stuck, part of getting unstuck is just recognizing that you have solutions. It may not be as bad as it looks, or gaining perspective of things. Sometimes it's not zooming into the problems, it's zooming out and having a bigger picture view of things. And it's because it's a feeling stuck is a feeling, and it's a perspective, right? You feel like you're stuck. Some people are really wealthy and really successful, and they feel stuck because they've got all these obligations, and they don't and they don't want to, they want to keep the money rolling in, and they want to keep their lifestyle or whatever. And even that can feel more stuck than someone who's in poverty, and poverty obviously has a lot of challenges and difficulties, but some people feel a lot freer without all this. Like sometimes what makes me feel stuck is all the stuff that I have, and I want to get rid of stuff. And sometimes owning a house is it feels, it can feel like a burden. And Sure.
But look, I'm not complaining. I'm really grateful. I have a great house and a great location in the city I live, and so but sometimes I need to take myself out of that perspective of, it's all too much. I feel bound by all these financial commitments, and so that's keeping me stuck in a job or whatever. People will have those thoughts, and for you and I are very lucky and privileged to we're working jobs we love to do. So probably we're not feeling stuck in that side. And like I said, I love the house. When things go wrong, I feel like I'm stuck. I have a heritage home, so things will go wrong, and you feel like, man, I'm stuck with this, albatross. And it's not that way. It's just the perspective I have in the moment. So
Yeah.
sometimes you can breathe through it and it'll pass.
Mm.
But when these things remain with you over time, then it's time to reevaluate and rethink things.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I do want to say though, that is, I mean, I think we're making this sound like it's very easy, and I mean, on a philosophical level, it is, right? Well, I just think differently, or just
Yeah.
do it. But I can remember one client that I had, and this person was really feeling stuck, and I couldn't help this person. It's sometimes it's difficult coaching someone when the person is not willing. Maybe it says something about my coaching skills, I don't know, but it's to inspire people to think in a different way. And if you're not willing to open up and think in a different way and challenge your own way of thinking, then it's not going to happen. And that it might be that fear is so strong there that I'm not even willing to allow my mind to go into that area.
Yeah.
Because bad things will happen.
Yeah.
And if the fear is so strong there, in this certain situation, I wasn't able to get this person feeling unstuck, and it sort of it annoys me still today.
Yeah, well, we both know that you can only help someone who's willing to help themselves. I had a client as well who was actually quite successful, ran his own IT company, and he, he had these issues that kept coming up, but at the end of the day, he was hiring me as a coach just to listen to his problems. All the tools I presented to him and all the things, the support that I was trying to give him, he couldn't accept it. And so, until sometimes people need to have, either you change or sometimes life will force you to change, right? So you'll have these crises in life, and sometimes crises are the best teachers. And sometimes until people have that, until the pressure and the suffering is enough, people aren't willing to make those changes.
Because there's a really big difference between, let's say, understanding something or having an awareness of something, and actually also believing in something, but then actually committing to it and doing it. That's something really different. And even though I really believe this is right and this is the way that I should go about a certain thing, it doesn't equal to me taking that initiative and acting upon it. And if that doesn't happen, maybe you're not going to have the results that you want. So what will take you to commit to an action that will lead you there? And as we're talking a lot about your patterns of thinking here, that's kind of the fundament to start the feeling of being unstuck, but then you have to act on it as well. And there might be a gap there, actually.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not easy. Like, none of this change is never easy. Some change is easier than others, but for the most part, when we're trying to overcome our fear, when we're trying to develop new habits, when there's a lot at stake, it's not easy to change. Whether it's fear or whether it's just overwhelming, right? Where there's when you're trying to fit in a change and there's all these demands on your time. I don't think there's anything easy about it. I think that's why I encourage people not to, sometimes maybe the right thing to do is, you've got to just throw caution to the wind and leave everything behind you. That can be the right thing if if you can handle the fear that comes with that. But I think for a lot of people, small incremental change is the lasting change that works for most people. And so, again, there's no one right way, and I'm not telling people that not to follow their dreams and drop everything, but but just be aware that, just make sure that you're the type of person. It's just like in investing, where people talk, well, you might not be the right kind of person to invest in the stock market, because, if you're freaking out the minute you lose 5% of value or whatever. So just knowing yourself, I think, is really important, and recognizing the amount of change that you can handle, because otherwise you'll get stuck in another kind of, you'll jump out of one situation and burn a bridge and cut loose, and then you'll be stuck in this. And some people feel like, well, I've got to force myself to be in that panic situation so I'll actually do it. Well, then it's a question of, is that the right motivation? Because there's other ways to motivate yourself rather than just the fear of, being destitute and losing everything, right? So I think those are all the things to keep in mind. And I think knowing yourself is a big part of that. It's an important piece of that.
Yeah. Also, one more thing that I thought about is this: if you're feeling stuck, or if you're feeling unhappy about a situation, this time perspective on things. So, if you're writing diary or something like that, but just perhaps once a week, if you're, say, on a scale from 1 to 10 or whatever you choose, but in a certain area that, this is making me feel bad, this is making me feel stuck. How does that evolve over time? Because you might feel that something is very annoying and troubling you at this point, but if you're looking back at that 10 weeks later, it might be that this is not an issue, and things evolve. This is not an issue anymore, and things have moved on. So to actually map that there is some momentum, you are actually not stuck. Things are happening, but you might be feeling that it's a feeling of being stuck. But if you get this time perspectives and time bond on things, that things are actually evolving, things are happening. Now, okay, I can change. What else could, and then looking for opportunities from that step. So, what else could I do?
Yeah, putting things in perspective, and the memory that we have, the things that are most prominent in our memory are those that are the most emotionally charged, like the biggest joys in life and the biggest disappointments, or the biggest frustrations or whatever. Those are emotionally charged, and so they tend to stay present in our minds. And when we talk about things in terms of, this always happens, or this, it's important to break that down and, like you say, map it out, because a lot of times the things that we think always happen to us actually happen to us very infrequently. And they're just those things that are present in our memory because they're so emotionally charged, right? Yeah. So I think that's a good one to do as well. And I think maybe one of the last things for me is, when you are feeling stuck, not to ignore it, not to pretend it's not there. Certainly, a lot of times when we try and numb ourselves, or we try and distract ourselves from what we're unhappy with. And I think that's how we get to that place of feeling stuck, is because we ignore all those inner signals that have said, actually, we don't like the direction we're going. This is not good. I don't, I think it's important to listen to those inner signals on your way there. Because if you're feeling dissatisfied or uncomfortable, yeah, that can happen. It might be just fear. It might be just, you're uncomfortable with the change that's happening. But if you find you consistently feel that way, and it develops and grows over time, and you're feeling more and more stuck, it's having a drink or doing some other thing to distract yourself from how you're feeling is not the way to address it. It's about reflecting and making and understanding that where you need to make corrections, or where you'd like to make corrections to get you more onto track to where you want to be. Because feeling stuck in life is, there are a lot of people who are stuck in poverty, stuck in situations that are, they feel they can't get out of, and it's not a great place to be. It's certainly not a happy place to be. And if you're feeling like that at work, think about how many hours of your life are spent at a job. And even if you can't change it now or tomorrow or next week, starting to make a plan, or trying to look at the steps, or getting some support and help to figure out what the right way out of it is. If you feel stuck in an abusive relationship, get some help. There are resources there, and we're never stuck. We're only stuck as the choices we're unwilling to make, right? I think sometimes it just takes a step back and seeing what all the options are, because sometimes we feel stuck because we can't see what potential is out there, what options are out there. So obviously there are different levels of stuckness. There are things that you need to change quickly because it's a danger to yourself or to, but I think that that general sense of feeling stuck is that I'm not where I want to be in life and I don't know how to change. Our organization is in a place where we've hit a dead end and we don't see the solutions. These are times where reflection is needed, analysis is needed, and then decisions are needed. And I think that's really important. And hopefully, you haven't gotten yourself to this dead end where you feel like you've got to change now, or there's going to be serious consequences. I think it's the idea of, and this is one of the reasons why, because it came up with someone I was talking to. I don't think it's healthy to let it get to this point where you're feeling so stuck that you're in panic, that you feel like, I just can't go on with my life this way. Sometimes that's what it takes. That's the pressure it takes for people to be willing to make a change. But ideally, you don't get yourself to that spot, right? That's one of the main messages that I wanted to have for the podcast today. So,
yeah. I mean, it could be potentially a really serious situation. So I'm glad you brought that up. That for us to really think about that, it's not a laughing matter, right? It can be feeling stuck and really be, as you said, if you're in an abusive relationship or something like that. I mean, that's very, very serious stuff.
Yeah.
But what I guess what I take away from this, and I think that's something that I think about a lot, is this fact that we've been talking about what's your choice? So what's your obligation? What do you have to do? What do you must do? Or what do you want to do? And that's something that I really like in most aspects of coaching, that we have the opportunity to sort of brainstorm our options, and we don't have to think about if it's something that we could do or not, but then thinking on that basis, well, what do I want to do now? So in a situation, if I brainstorm up that I need to, or I could move to Egypt tomorrow, is that something that I want to do? No, but I want to do this, and then at least then I'm making a conscious choice of something that is relevant, that brings me in the right direction, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to turn up my life flip side over on one day, right? It can be small incremental changes, as you're saying.
Exactly. I think a lot of people let themselves kind of be manipulated, or they just kind of let themselves be carried along with life, and you can go with the flow, and there's certain situations where I think that's good. I think it's just important to recognize where things are taking you. It doesn't have to be concrete, and you don't have to have everything mapped out, and you can't look in the crystal ball and know the future. But when you're making choices, certainly more important, significant choices in your life, I think if you're not asking yourself the question, is this getting me closer to what I want or not, right? Or is this getting me closer or farther away from where I want to be? I think that's an important question to be asking yourself, especially when you're continually feeling these feelings and getting these signals and feeling like you're getting closer and closer to feeling stuck, or to feeling like, I can't get out of this situation, and that's not the situation you want to be in. So if I'm really unhappy here, so I'm going to leave and go over here. But the question is going over here getting me closer to what I want or not? Or is it getting me farther away from it? And I think those are, because some people just they create change for the sake of change, and they land in the same relationships, they land in the same kind of jobs, they land in the same kind of financial situations, whatever, they continue to get themselves, and it's a pattern, and because they've maybe not given enough thought to where they really want to be, they've just running away from what they don't want.
Could be.
Yeah, I mean that I find that's part of what leads people to getting into stuck situations, right? So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, good question to ask.
Yeah, cool.
Is it bringing me closer to or further away? So what's bringing you closer to your next steps right now?
Oh, a lot of things. I think. Well, look, me being busy means. It leads me to more financial freedom. I think the choices that I'm making in terms of how I'm allocating my time, I'm spending time on writing, and that's going to help me finish my next book project. And I've made some choices around my personal relationships, which are more fulfilling. Allow me more time with the people that I love. And I think I've worked a long time at this. I've been on my own personal development journey for good 25 years. Since I first started reading people like Wayne Dyer and all the gurus of personal development from back in the 90s. And I think for me, I've built up enough tools and things to allow myself to reflect and think about where the choices I'm taking are leading me. But I wasn't always that way, I would make choices that I'd get myself into debt, and then that kept me tied to work that I didn't want to do, and the debt wasn't for things that were going to make me happy or that were going to help move me forward. It was always very spontaneous. Here's the situation and here's the immediate solution, or here's what's going to relieve the pain for now or whatever. And so I got myself stuck in I got myself feeling stuck in a lot of situations. And I would be in a relationship where I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, but I just kind of went along with it anyway. And the more time that passed, the more you've invested in the relationship, and the harder it is to break up. And so there's all these different things we do where we go, I don't feel bad enough in this situation to change it yet. And then pretty soon, time goes by, and people will then all of a sudden they're in a relationship, they're unhappy, and then they have a child together, and now they really feel stuck because they never really loved this person, but they had a child together, and and they were just kind of going with the flow, and it's better than being alone. And so it's knowing about what you really want, right? And that's part of what gets people stuck, is they don't know what they really want, and they don't realize where life is taking them, right? So all proactive things we can do in order to, but it took me a long time to learn it, and that's why I agree with you. It's not easy. I needed a lot of pain before I was willing to make changes. So but
interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's sometimes when we have these discussions, I think it's interesting to hear your personal story, or what's happening there, because we talk a lot about frameworks and theories and ideas, but like how has that affected your life? It was really interesting to hear. So, thanks.
And it's actually funny because my girlfriend was like, when she because I sometimes when you're overwhelmed, you got lots to do and you get frustrated because things aren't going your way, and she's like, you have the best job ever. You're just so lucky. I mean, and so sometimes you need that external impulse to just be grateful for what you have, because I wasn't feeling stuck, but sometimes you feel overwhelmed, and it's important not to conflate that sort of overwhelmed with feeling stuck, because sometimes you've just got too much of a good thing on your plate, right? And it starts to feel like too much, and so it's, again, those are times when it helps to take stock, and sometimes it's feedback from other people, and sometimes it's just important to take a step back, because sometimes other people think your life is amazing, and I had this when I was still in Canada. People thought I had the best life ever, but there were elements, my own mental health, but there were just elements of my life that I had created that weren't good, and I felt stuck, and so everyone from the outside thought I was crazy. I walked away from a business, and I left I left Canada. People think Vancouver is the greatest city in the world. It is an amazing city, and I didn't leave because I was unhappy there. But there was something that made me feel stuck there, and a lot of personal stuff that I'm not going to go into here. But certainly helping me step away from that, getting the distance, helped me resolve a lot of my inner stuff that I had to deal with. And I don't think I could have done it without finding the distance. And so as much as I gave up a lot, I gained a whole lot. I gained a whole new perspective on life. I mean, I backpacked through Asia for 6 months, and that was a life-changing situation. And that was one of those jump into the deep end, and it was great. And then when I got to Europe, thinking, all right, now I was successful in business before, I'm gonna go back at it. And then there was a period, it was like, oh wow, maybe I have bit off a little more than I can chew. But fortunately, it all worked out for me. But it's there are times when I made those big jumps, but I made the big jump because I had let stuff get to a point that built up so strongly that I didn't see any other way out of it. So again, sometimes making that cut and a clean slate and a big change is the right thing to do. Sometimes the small incremental step is the better thing to do. It kind of depends on the situation, but So I've been through the roller coaster. I've had all my ups and downs, and now this is the benefit of all my of 25 years of experience of my own personal development. I know myself better. I know what I want a lot more. I know who I am. The question of who am I? We have a lot of labels on ourselves of who we are, and they're really more obligations than they are who we are. They're the title, and we become so identified with things that keep us stuck. I mean, even this house, which I love, but the renovations that we've been doing here, I've been living over my girlfriend's place, and I've been traveling a lot for work, and being away made me realize, actually, I don't need this house. I could be happy somewhere else. And although, when I'm here, I think, oh, I love this house, I don't want to give it up, right? So I can appreciate it, but I'm not identified with it. I can, I could move to Sweden and be your neighbor, and I could probably be happy. So I think it's important to remember that, some of the attachments we have, and the things we identify with, they keep us, they're part of what keep us stuck. Right? They're part of what keep us not moving forward. And, when I gave up my car in 2019, I drove a really nice car that, impressed other people, but I didn't drive it that much because I was away so much. And then giving it up was liberating. Giving it up was, not being identified with that, not being identified with the title of your job, because sometimes a job can kill you. A job can really run you down. But the prestige and the title that you have is what keeps you stuck there. So it's not always the things that you think that are keeping you stuck. It's sometimes your identification with that thing that keep you stuck. So thanks for asking me to share the story, because it all of a sudden got this. I think that was a good kind of final push. I almost forgot about that whole thing. What we identify with sometimes keeps us stuck. Who will I be if I make this change? I won't be myself anymore, and that keeps us stuck. So, anyway, great. I think that's a really good place to finish off on. I'm feeling good about. Thanks for letting me roll all that out.
No, but that's interesting. I mean, just talk about it. I mean, I wasn't feeling particularly stuck before we started this conversation, but just having a conversation about this makes me feel, I guess, a bit inspired and more free to make my own choices, and happy about where I am, and just understanding what I appreciate. And it's small, subtle thing. I mean, again, if we're talking about a feeling, it's more small things like that can have an effect on that feeling, can have a very, very big change on your situation. So
yeah,
it helps me as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And the reason that I don't feel stuck is because I ask myself those questions regularly. Is this getting me where I want to go or not? And so when I have these offers for bigger projects or things, I can ask myself that question, and and consider things in that way. And the other thing is, I feel like I know myself pretty well. I know what's important to me, and so I have a clear sense of identity, much clearer than it ever was before. And so I'm lucky I have all those tools. And as a coach, hopefully, I hope that, nobody's perfect. And, I meet other coaches and I sometimes think that, geez, I should know this stuff better. Why do I make these choices that get me into these situations? But, we're all just human. And there's no such thing as perfection. But I have the benefit of, you and I, we've spent a lot of time with this material and we have the tools at hand. Don't always use them. We're not perfect either, but I think that's the benefit. So I think if people are feeling stuck, a coach can really help you gain perspective, and perspective is one of the biggest shifts, right? Gaining perspective, recognizing your options is one of the big shifts that help you move out of that, and make sure it's somebody that's aligned with your own values, because not everybody will talk to you about the whole identity piece and being too identified with things or too stuck in things that aren't you, right? So anyway, before we go off on another tangent, maybe we'll wrap it up there for today. What do you think?
I just realized
you froze there. You cut out there. What was your last thought?
Okay. No, I just said that could be the topic for our next conversation, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're up next. You get to choose the next one, so you think about if that's the one you want to choose. All right, listen. Thanks for listening to another one of our conversations, our podcasts. Appreciate all of our listeners, and hopefully this was helpful. And if you're feeling stuck, like I say, get some help. But if you're not feeling stuck, really make sure that you're aware of the choices you're making, so you don't, and be proactive, so you're not going to get yourself in that stuck position, because we've all been there, and it can be avoided. All right. Hopefully that's been helpful. It certainly has for me. Thanks for the great conversation, Toby.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
All right. Talk to you soon.
See you next time.
Cheers.